Yeah, hello. So, my name is Yasir Usman, and I'm an AI engineer. I've been working for a few years. I have a master's degree in AI. So, today I'll be talking about what is cache and what is pull cache and push cache and how it actually works. So, if you ever built an API, you've probably seen this happen. Your endpoint is fast when you have like 10 users, but and still okay with 100 users, but then you certainly have thousands of users hitting the same endpoint over and over again. Now your database is getting hammered. So the CPU usage goes up, response time increases, and everything starts slowing down. So the question is, why are we asking the database for the exact same data hundred of and thousands of times? So that's the problem that cache solves, or Redis we would use in this case. So in this video, I will not just talk about what Redis is, but also we will also understand what caching is and how it actually works. When you should cache data, what is pull cache, what is push cache, and where each strategy is used in real production system. So yeah, let's get started. So what is Redis? So first of all, Redis is basically an in-memory key value database. Now the important words here are in-memory. Normally databases like Postgres or MySQL store data on disk. Disk storage is permanent, but reading from disk is relatively slow. Redis on the other hand stores data inside RAM, and RAM is incredibly fast. We're talking about microseconds instead of milliseconds. So the difference may not sound huge, but imagine your APIs receive 100,000 requests every second. Saving a few milliseconds or every request becomes a massive performance improvement. That is why Redis is often used whenever performance speed is more important than permanent storage. So, is Redis a database? Now, here's something that confuses a lot of people, and that answer is yes. Redis is a NoSQL database. It can permanently store data if configured correctly. But in most applications, we don't use Redis as a primary database. Instead, we use it as a cache sitting in front of another database. So think of it like your Postgres database in your is your warehouse, and Redis is a small storage shelf right next to your disk. So basically, Redis is like RAM, and database is like a hard drive. So what is cache? So let's understand cache. So cache is simply temporary storage for data that is accessed frequently. The idea is very simple. If multiple users are asking for the information, don't keep querying the database. Store the results somewhere much faster. For example, let's say your homepage displays the top 20 trending products. Imagine 100,000 users open your website today without caching. Every single request hits the database. That means the database executes exactly the same SQL query 100,000 times completely, which is completely unnecessary. Instead, the first request fetches the data, Redis stores it. Every request after that simply reads from Redis. The database doesn't even know those requests happened. That's why cache reduces database load so dramatically. So where Redis sits, Redis is like you would have a client, then you would have the backend API, and after that Redis would sit between the backend API and the database. So the application doesn't directly expose Redis user. Everything goes through your backend. So the backend decides whether Redis should be used or not. So what is cache hit versus cache miss? A cache hit means the request that already exists inside the Redis. The backend asks Redis initially returns the value and we're done. A cache miss doesn't mean that Redis doesn't have the data. Now the backend queries the database, gets the result and stores it in Redis and finally returns it to the user. The first request is usually slower, and every request after that becomes much faster. So what is full cache or cache aside? Now this is the most common strategy. The flow is very straightforward. User sends a request, backend checks Redis, Redis has the data, it returns it. If Redis doesn't, we query the database, store the result inside Redis, then return the response. Notice like it doesn't automatically see update from the database. The application only pulls when someone requests it. This is called pull. Uh, so the nice thing about this approach is that you don't waste memory caching data nobody ever requests. Uh, so, but the downside is the first request is always slower. So there are always like trade-offs, and then there is push cache, or so instead of waiting for the user data, the application immediately updates Redis whenever the database changes. So let's say someone edits our product price, the backend updates the postgres immediately after that also updates Redis. Now when the user requests the product, Redis already contains the latest value. Nobody has to wait for a database query. That is why it is called push caching. The application pushes fresh data into Redis as soon as changes happen. This gives the user fast response. But there is a trade-off. Every write operation becomes a little more expensive because you're updating two systems instead of one. So when should you use it? Full cache is better when your data doesn't change very often. You more don't want to cache everything. Memory usage matters, and some data may never be requested. So for example, blog posts, product pages, user profile, documentation. Push cache is better when data changes frequently. Freshness is critical. User expect real-time updates. For example, stock market prices, live dashboard, leaderboards, financial application, gaming stats. So no approach is better. It just depends on your trade-off on what you want to trade off. So Redis isn't just a cache. Uh, for example, Redis supports string lists that sorted sets, hashes, streams, pubsub messaging, counter, distributed logs, rate limiting, session storage. So Redis can be used to not only cache but a lot of things. So when should you not use cache? So imagine you're checking your bank account balance. You don't want to see a balance from 5 minutes ago. You want to see the value immediately. Similar inventory system, medical records, payment processing, which is sensitive information. You don't want cache there. So yeah, so just as a recap, Redis is incredibly fast memory database. Most applications use it as a cache sitting between the backend and the primary database. When data is already inside cache, there's a cache hit. If that is really heavy, that's a cache miss. Pull cache where someone requests the data. Push cache updates Redis immediately. Understanding the two patterns is important because you see the memory wave from small startups to companies like Netflix, Uber, and other large-scale distributed system. So, yeah, that is it. And thank you for watching.